And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. This one comes to us from Power799 who asked the question. I've done a couple One Piece characters now. Let's keep this ball rolling with Chopper, the humanoid deer member of the Straw Hats Pirate. Chopper, as I said, he's the deer, but he ate a special Zoan fruit. I believe it's the model, like a Hito no Mi, I think it's called, the model human fruit, which gave him a human anthropomorphic form. It gave him more of a humanoid form. I think he's the youngest one. He's the most childlike of the group, but he's also the most medically knowledgeable of them. He is their doctor. And as such, his role generally is to try to heal and help, but he's also can aid in battle, as his double fruit and his training with it has given him new forms, new strength, all that goodness. So, let's break it down, folks. With a deer character of any kind, a deer Pokemon makes the most sense. And we have a grand total of 2 on here. Starting with his partner Pokemon, we have Sawsbuck. Now, it doesn't really matter. I just went with the summer form. It doesn't actually matter which Sawsbuck you have, because Sawsbuck changes with the seasons. Unless you're playing Scarlet and Violet, in which case its form changes with the location you're in, which is a little bit cool, which is kind of fun. But I could have gone Deerling, and I was tempted to, because Chopper is still young and a kid. However, Chopper has enough, let's call them advanced forms to look more adult, that I felt going full on Sawsbuck, particularly because there's been time gaps with the series and training, was the best route to go with. Following up with Sawsbuck, we had the only other deer Pokemon on the team, that is Wyrdeer. Now, why Wyrdeer? Well, again, it's one of the only other deer Pokemon that exists. There really aren't a lot of them when you break it down. There is the Deerling line, the Stantler/Wyrdeer line. Xerneas is a deer. Xerneas is a deer. After that, I actually struggle to think of another deer-based Pokemon. I'm sure there is one, and maybe I'm just missing it, but I can't think of a deer style Pokemon. Can any of you think of one? Because there's no moose Pokemon right now. That's a deer. And there's no elk or there's plenty of deer that you could make Pokemon out of. The Mudjak deer, which has fangs, reindeer, elk, moose. There's a couple other different types of deer as well, or antelope. Those fall into the deer family as well. So there are plenty of deer just out there to do different designs with. But yeah, we really don't have a lot, so this is all I could really do. I wasn't going to put Xerneas, by the way, because even though Xerneas is the Pokemon of life, it doesn't really work on this team, I think. And I'll explain that when I get to the legendary I did put on the team. Spoilers, there is one. But, back to Wyrdeer. Wyrdeer works because it gains the Psychic type upon evolution. It's got a better physical stat, if I remember correctly, than Deerling, so you can lean into a couple more of the physical aspects of Chopper. But more to the point, the Psychic type represents intellect and knowledge and using your mind over matter, which is what Chopper normally does. So I think that works. However, that being said, Chopper also has, originally using the Rumble Balls, different forms that involved like amplifying parts of his body, like arm, leg. One's called Kung Fu form. That being said, I felt one Pokemon could fit all that, because the Kung Fu form is kind of a derpy, almost Big Chungus looking kind of character. I went with Bewear. Bewear, big furry bear Pokemon, looks almost like a stuffed toy. It is a normal fighting type, and it's very powerful, like in terms of physicality. So I think it works well as kind of an amalgamation of those. Plus, there's also the monster form Chopper has, which is what happens when he kind of goes out of control. I couldn't really find anything that was a one-to-one for that, because again, we're talking about like a deer kind of Pokemon monster, almost Wendigo looking creature, to be honest. And there's just nothing that really works on that level. But beyond everything else, besides having physical aspects that he can use, more to the point, he's a healer. He is the medical man. He's the doctor of the group. And so I needed some Pokemon that could learn healing moves, like Life Dew, for example, which luckily can be learned by our good friend Chansey. Companions to most Nurse Joys, oftentimes used as a bit of a healer Pokemon. I think this is a perfectly good Pokemon to have on a team. And I think it works better than Blissey, because while Chopper has grown a lot in the time skip, he is still growing. He's still learning. So ultimately, I think it's a good I think it's a good fit for him to have a Chansey. And again, I wanted to go with a Mon that could learn a move that can heal individuals. Speaking of which, beyond just healing individuals, what about bringing Pokemon back from the dead? Not quite. But what about bringing them back from fainting? We have one Pokemon that can do that, Pawmont. I haven't done Pawmont. I've done Pawmo, but I have not done Pawmont. Pawmont, the Pikachu clone of the Paldea region, which really, when you break it down, if you wanted to have an evolution, you should have just gone Pawmi to Pawmo. I think that's the way you should have handled it, quite frankly. I did a video a while back, and I probably want to do like an updated version of that with new opinions on how many Pokemon there should actually be, like Pokemon that just have serve no purpose for existing kind of things, and take them out and see how big the Pokedex would be afterwards. If I were to redo that video, and let me know if you'd like to see that video done in like Redux, let me know, because I definitely would take Pawmo out of the equation, just have Pawmi and Pawmont. I would definitely do that. But because it has the Revival Blessing technique, only one use only ability, unless you're using like Ethers and stuff like that to revive Pokemon, it can literally resurrect a Pokemon from fainting up to 50%. So that makes sense for a character who would be trying to revive people. You know, it's basically clear. It's basically a paddles. That I can't remember. Defibrillators. That's what it is. But now, the legendary Pokemon. There's not a lot of legendary Pokemon that have straight-out healing abilities. Yes, Ho-Oh can resurrect the dead. Chopper can't go that far, so that didn't really work. Then I had, and if I think like throughout the other ones, like Cresselia can cure bad dreams, kind of, but that doesn't really work for here. Not many in, say, Unova could really work in this way. No one really in, except Xerneas kind of can, but it's more like Abundance of Life, doesn't really gel well here. No one in Alola, no one in Galar, except for maybe Zaruda with Jungle Healing, but even then, that's a stretch. And there's really not anyone in Paldea. So I'm like, okay, is there something? I'm not saying I needed a legendary, but I'm trying to think of Pokemon that have these abilities. And I knew something could do it. And luckily, we came up to Suicune. Suicune has the ability to purify even the most polluted water. This would be a boon to someone who is trying to, use clean water, needs clean water on a call for like making like potions, antidotes, all that, and dispelling toxins. So I definitely think Suicune would be a decent fit in that regard. Plus, walking in water, they're pirates, it can like run along the boat. I couldn't find in many Pokemon, I was trying to look it up, Pokemon that dealt with like diseases or illnesses, but unfortunately I couldn't find anything that really does that. Like, I don't know that we have much in terms of Pokemon that works on the illness spectrum of things. So with that being said, how balanced, as always, is this team? And then, how well does this team do in any particular region? Provided that the partner Pokemon is the top, going to the right, then bottom, then right again. That's the order this character would catch this Pokemon in. First off, in terms of balance, it's not, let me put it this way. Fighting is the only type that it hits 3 of these Mon particularly hard because of the normal typing on majority of these. Where there's exempt from that because Psychic resists fighting. Everything else is a ×2. ×2 weakness to flying, which is mitigated because of Pawmont's electricity. Otherwise, it'd be ×3. ×2 weakness to bug for the Psychic type and the Grass type. ×2 weakness to Fairy for the 2 fighting types. ×2 weakness to Psychic for the 2 fighting types. And technically, there's a ×2 weakness to Fire on this team. Obviously, Sawsbuck, but because of the fluffy ability on Beware, even though it isn't naturally weak to Fire, it might as well be because let me put it this way. I added it to a weakness list. It doesn't technically mean it's a weakness. It doesn't do as well against Fire as it should. With that said, though, the big question now, how balanced is this team? And I'll say this, or not balanced, but how balanced enough is this team to handle the Pokemon League in any of these games? And surprisingly, no joke, starting out real quick, you would not struggle with Kanto really at all. Brock, your Deerling can learn both Double Kick and Leech Seed, so you're taking care of any Rock-type first-stage gym leader without too much difficulty. Even someone like Rorik and Sinnoh, with Leech Seed and Double Kick, you should be able to handle yourself all right. So, like, Brock, and then you'll have Misty, and you'll have a more evolved Deerling at that point. Not fully evolved Sawsbuck, but you know what I mean. Then, by that point, you have no problem with Lance. Erica's a little tricky, because you have nothing strong against Erica. But that being said, she's got nothing strong against you, except for some poison types to deal with the Sawsbuck, and that's it. At that point, you should have Weird Ear available at that point, or close to it. That being said, you should also have like some psychic moves to deal with the poison types. By the time you get to Koga, though, you definitely should have your Weird Ear available. And you'll also have Palmet at that point. And then by the time you get to Sabrina, you'll have Suicune. So even though you're two Pokemon weak to Psychic, you should be fine against. You should be fine against Blaine. Suicune can just cleave through that. Same with Giovanni with Sawsbuck and Suicune. And even your fighting types against the Rhydons. And most of Elite Four, you got fighting and electric to deal with, and even grass to deal with the water and the ice types. Bruno's not going to be a problem, quite frankly. 2 Onixes are going down fast, and you got a psychic type, even though it's part normal. Chansey's also a tank, so that's going to help. Agatha, you're not really going to be struggling that much. Yeah, she's got some she's got some ghost types, but you should be able to manage because you have enough coverage to deal with those, and you should be able to deal with the poison without too much difficulty. And honestly, because Suicune can actually learn an ice type move, you should have no problem with Lance. The only one you're going to struggle with because of diversity is going to be Blue. Pidgeot's going to be problematic because you got Tumon, who's straight up weak to flying. Then you got Alakazam to deal with. Then you got everything. I'll put it this way. It is possible you could beat Blue, depending on his team, but it would not be and never would be an easy win. It would be a win you're struggling with. The Revival Blessing is kind of key there with Palmont. You do that immediately when he comes out, unless you're going up against like Gyarados, and then of course you lose an electric attack. But you keep Palmont reserved, I think, before Suicune, or you throw Suicune in, then do Palmont after Suicune dies. Revive him, do as much as you can with Palmont, and then bring back Suicune. That, I think, is the play. But yes, in theory, you could become Kanto's champion. Johto, though, is a lot more of a struggle. Because honestly, you start with a flying type Jin. Even if you're a little over leveled, put the Leech Seed on, there's a good chance you might not beat him. But it's possible. You wouldn't struggle much with Bugsy. You actually wouldn't struggle much with Flannery, because you have, even though it's still a Stuffle at that point, you would still be able to take down the Miltank with fighting type moves. Morty is a little problematic because unfortunately everything in Johto is very underleveled. So while you'll have all your Mon, though, are immune to every ghost attack he has. So really just focus with, say, your Stantler with any psychic type moves you could have, your Sawsbuck with grass type moves, and if you can learn, say, a dark type move or something, like Bite or something. I can't remember what Stuffle's straight moveset is off the top of my head. Just try to, outlast him. Or just let him use the curse and then try to swap out or something like that. But yes, Morty, while difficult, you could do. After that, though, you should have a clean sweep all the way to Will, to the Elite Four. You should have no problem with Chuck. You should have no problem with Jasmine. Despite the level, or despite Steel not being, let me rephrase that. Despite your levels not being the best, you'll still have Suicune at this point, and you'll have 2 fighting types, so you should be fine. Price is no problem, and even Claire is no real problem. Again, Suicune having ice type moves is a boon. Will, though, I'll be honest, I think you kind of get stuck at Will, because Psychic with 2 flyers on the team is going to cleave through, because you're going to have 3 of your Mon taken out pretty quick. Even Palmont's not going to be able to do a lot. It's still not impossible, though. You shouldn't struggle with Koga that much, or Bruno, or Karen, to be honest. I think, though, you might get stopped at Lance, because even though you have Palmont who can take care of the Gyarados, and maybe even the Aerodactyl, and Suicune can theoretically take care of all of them, Suicune stats actually aren't, like, they're all 600, I believe, but they're not, like, super amazing, and the Dragonite, I think, outspeeds the Suicune, if I remember correctly. So, it's not impossible again, but this one's a lot more difficult. Then you get to Hoenn with Steven. Honestly, I think you're stopped a little bit of Brawly, because unless you have something to resist fighting, which you don't, you can't get past that Makuhita or that Machop, because both Deerling and Stantler are normal types. And Arm Thrust at this early stage with 2 unevolved Pokemon, yeah, no, that's no mas. That's no good. That's no bueno. Hypothetically, though, if you got through Brawly, that's a big if, you should actually be able to get through the majority of the game up until you get to the Elite Four, and then I think you're kind of stopped at, once again, Drake. Mind you, you still have Suicune to deal Ice-type moves. The problem is he's also got Salamence, Altaria, 2 Flygons, and a Kingdra. That Kingdra alone is kind of going to be a stopgap, because nothing you have, and I mean nothing, because that Dragon resists all your typings. The Water resists the Ice from any attack Suicune has. The Dragon resists the Electric and the Grass from the 2 Grass and Electric types. So I think Drake and Steven are kind of where you can't stop. And that's assuming you can even get past Brawly at that point. So, no, I don't think you can become champion of Hoenn. I also do not think you can become champion of Sinnoh. I do think you can get through the entire gyms, no problem. Like I said, even with Rorik and Cranidos having a very high attack stat, Leech Seed and Double Kick will help keep you alive. And then you should be able to, you're balanced enough that you should be able to get through the other ones. But honestly, and I didn't even think about this until I was watching some of these, this team has absolutely no answer for bug types. Think about that. Not only are 2 of its members weak to bug, with Weirdeer and Sawsbuck, but none of these Mon learn any attacks that can actually do anything against fucking against bug types. So you get an Elite Four bug member in Aaron, who's got Heracross, which means he can cleave through 3 of your team members just with Heracross alone. Plus you got Beautifly, you got Dustox, which aren't overly strong, and the flying means Palmot could theoretically take them down. But then you also got Drapion, and you got, who am I forgetting on the other one? He doesn't have Vespiquen. Who does Aaron have? I want to say it's like Fortress, but I don't think that's who he has on the team. Who is that who's that 5th member? I'm blanking on it right now. I know in the rematch team in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, he's actually got a Flygon on the team, which is nuts. Look, I like Sinnoh's actually, spoilers, one of my least favorite regions. It's something about it feels too compact. Like for example, the Pokedex is just not big enough and does not have the diversity. I fully believe that. Let's see. Elite Four, yeah. So I think expanding it out a little bit, like allowing, say, Flygon to be available in the game, allowing a little bit more for Dragon, because there's no other dragons in the damn region until after the main game, which is stupid as hell. Let's see here. So yeah, Aaron, it was okay. I thought it was Vespiquen. Yeah, Vespiquen. And if I go with the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl team, which for all the problems that game had, not even problems, just for all the disappointment that game had, the Elite Four was not one of them. Like, that is a tough Elite Four. That is arguably one of the strongest Elite Fours there are. And yeah, like, theoretically, the Palmot actually could take down the Beautifly and the Vespiquen, but it turns out Dustox is part poison. I forgot that part. And then you get one guy on the team who's not even a bug type, but he was a bug type at one point. I think you're just stuck at freaking Aaron. I don't think you can get past that. Even if you somehow did manage, you would still then have to deal with Lucian, who's a psychic type Elite Four member. And because the ground, you actually should have no problem between Sawsbuck and Suicune. And because there's at least 2 rock types on the team, you can use fighting there as well. Same with Flint, no problem. But then you got to deal with the Elite Four. You got to deal with Lucian. It's Lucian, right? Jeez, I got this big black box in front of me here. I can't. Okay. Yeah, Lucian. You got a Steel Psychic type, which you have no good answer for. You got a Fighting Psychic type, Normal Psychic type, Fairy Psychic, and then Alakazam just for your straight Normal Psychic. You were kind of effed. And then you got to deal with Cynthia, who's got one of the most hacked teams in all of the Elite Four history. Period. End of story. So, yeah, you cannot become champion in the Sinnoh region. Well, what about Unova? Honestly, depending on the game, the answer is no either way. Because depending on the game, you're going to hit a wall both times with Elisa. And even then, you might not even be able to make it past Roxy in Black and White 2. Just because she's a poison leader, and Stantler wouldn't have poison moves at that point. Even if you could, and that's a big if, you still got to get past Lisa, and that's 2 Emolga and a Zebstrika. And those Emolgas hit hard, and they're going to take down at least the Sawsbuck first. And you have no good answer for electric moves at that point. If you did somehow manage, you would still have to deal with Drake and Iris, or just Drake in the Black and White. No good answer for Dragons on the team, save for Suicune. And even then, I still don't think you could get past the Elite Four, the fighting type member Elite Four, who, by the way, doesn't just have fighting type moves. He's got Sucker Punch on that team. So the one Mon on the team that is the one normal type Mon who's neutral to fighting can get taken out by a Sucker Punch, which means all you're left with is Palma and Suicune. So have fun with that. And even if you could get past that, you're not beating Alder, because I said before, and I'll say it again, you don't have a good answer for bug types. And he's got 3 on his team. Excelgor, which outspeeds everything on this team. So your Weirdeer and your Sawsbuck are done. He's got Excavalier, which you have no good answer for because you don't have a fire type Mon on this team or a fire type move. And then Volcarona, which the only answer you would have is Suicune, assuming Suicune's able to put up a fight and not dead already or at half HP from a revival. And then you got to deal with Iris, whose Hydreigon is going to wreck shop through a lot of this. Like, you think, even with Beware and Palmont, you don't outspeed a Hydreigon. And Hydreigon's stats, way too powerful. Even if you beat it, you still got to deal then with, like, Aggron you could beat, but then you got to deal with Haxorus, which is technically your ace. She also has freaking Lapras on the team, Archeops, and then who was the other dragon? I am now blanking on she had on the team. I can't. No, not Flygon, not Samus. I don't think it was Dragonite. What's the other dragon she had on the team? I'm actually legitimately blanking here. Either way, the point is you can, because you have 3 dragons and 3 non-dragons, but who are dragon-esque. So yeah, just no, you cannot beat her. You cannot beat either of these 2. Now comes the Kalos, and Kalos, everyone, is where you get that definitive yes. You would become the champion of Kalos here. The very simple reason for that is the only one in the only 2 members of between the elite and the gym leaders is the Steel Elite Four member, whose name I forget. That one will give you some trouble because you don't really have any strong answers to the dual Steel types, but you should be able to beat it. Dragon should be no problem. Fire should be no problem. And then water should honestly be no problem. And the only gym leader you should actually struggle with in any capacity is Ramos. And that's just because no strong answers to grass type moves, but that should be fine. And then Diantha, who would start out with Hawlucha and would probably take out the Sawsbuck unless you'd switch out. So the Sawsbuck would go down. However, the minute you just decide to go full out, either do Palmot or say Weirdeer, and then the Tyrantrum comes out, you go Suicune, and you can honestly, no joke, take out the entirety of the rest of her team with Suicune alone, except for maybe Mega Gardevoir, because you can use Ice and Water quickly to take out Tyrantrum, Water to take out Amoras, you can use Ice to take out Gourgeist and Goodra, and then you just get left with the Mega Gardevoir, which if you can't beat Mega Gardevoir with 5 Pokemon, granted, it would still take you a while, and even then, save Palmot, because then you can use Revival Blessing to bring back Suicune if you need to. Yes, you would become the champion in Kalos. In Galar, you run into a wall with Kobu. You would not have either Sawsbuck or Weirdeer at this point, and you still have a Stuffle. Stuffle has Fluffy, all of which are underleveled, and one of them is, and so 2 are weak to fire. You can't get past Kobu. And if you did, you have no good, you're actually going to get completely curb stomped by B, because it's a fighting type gym, and 3 of those 4 are weak to fighting. And then there's the ghost type gym, which luckily your normal type could do immunity against for a while, but you don't have a lot of good answers. And then even you got past that, you still got to deal with later down the road all the way to Leon. And again, this is a team that cannot take on Leon at all. That Dragapult will wreak havoc on this team. So, yeah. And then finally, Paldea. Honestly, this was sad. You can't even get past the first gym on this one. Similar to Johto, you probably won't, because it's a bug gym. And even though her moves are very few on her team, Deerling just doesn't have the moves to really be counteracting bugs. Even if he did, you then got to deal with Brassius, it was, the grass-type gym leader. You'd struggle a little bit, but that one you might be able to manage. But then you're screwed at Iono. You can't get past Iono with this team. You just can't do it. So, yeah, it's some balance, some not. Either way, though, that's my thoughts. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll see you for the next one. I got a couple more videos to do today, including a special one, folks. We're getting ready because we're back, baby.